I think we've had three complementary perspectives of digital, innovation, creativity, and some very, I think, overarching ideas and some very specific, I think, quite interesting ways that this is being pursued now. So, any first response, any kind of initial responses or comments to our panel, please? There's a roving mic, David.
Hi there, David Firmage, CUE. Great speakers, thank you. Question for Johnny first. I like that, that whole sort of change idea. How did you think of the ideas that, that you started doing it? Was that sort of in-house thinking? Was that sort of networking thinking? So how did those things happen? And what could we learn from that, for ourselves?
I don't think there's a magic bullet, but what we've done since day one is, one, have a development team in-house that actually is charged with thinking up ideas. Great job if you can get it. There are a lot of clever people that do that with us. We've also been very focused from day one on the application of new technologies to media. And a number of years ago, that wasn't even digital. It was we were the first people to put on television camcorder-produced factual and drama, because we fancied creating content programs that were done in a different way than were done before that. And we got buzz from doing that, and when we did it successfully and people liked them, watched them, we got a buzz from that. But there's a good story about a guy called Dan Jones, who's our director of multi-platform. He started as a graduate trainee from Birmingham University, not from media, but from American Studies. And we were running a thing for Channel 4 called Ideas Factory, which is basically creating ideas in the new world of this internet thingy that's coming along. And Dan came in the first week and said, so what should we be doing then? And he said, well, I think I might go into the city centre and talk to people about mobile phones. What is he talking about? And he did. He went and talked to people about mobile phones in the city centre. And what came back from that was fantastic information about the way people, users, real people, were using these new things called mobile phones. And now we've got smartphones and what have you. And a lot of that thinking is just, one encourages that in order that new ideas come through that we don't even know about.
One quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
Why is it all health sector? Is it because that's where the money is? Have you all just followed the money?
No.
Of course.
Well, I think health is rather important to everyone in this room. If we're not healthy, that's probably the most serious problem we can have. So it's really important. Embarrassing Bodies was called Rude Health 12 years ago, when one really clever person in our office thought up this idea of encouraging people to talk about things that's wrong with them, that they don't usually talk about. Simple idea, 12 years ago. Here we are, 12 years on, and it's a plethora of activity. And we don't just do health. Billy Connolly's not really about health, it's about entertainment. My Super Suite's not really about health. We do a whole range of stuff. But I think health is an interesting space for multi-platform. And we're working in the company to develop a business within the business that actually focuses on digital life sciences, because we think that is, as a multi-platform approach, could be very valuable for us.
The other thing to add about the ideas, I think, is pushing past state of the art, not worrying about pushing past that, experimenting as far as possible into, as you just said earlier on, you'd never believe that was going to happen, or you'd never believe that was appropriate, or people would use this or relate to it in that way. But unless you push past that all the time, you can just stop accepting what's normal and push past, then ideas are going to be tough to come by. And as I say, and Johnny was saying, from a health point of view, I think that and especially in terms of the agenda that we're here for tonight, is if you're not able to make your own decisions about your health, then what really can you make your own decisions about? And if that is not supported by easy access to data to help you do that, then we're all, yeah, you can imagine.
Yes. Any other comments from the colleagues? Yeah.
The mic doesn't work as far
I
as
don't think
can
it
tell.
does work.
So,
No. I think we're all pretending it
It
works.
sometimes makes people a lot more comfortable to be doing that, though.
Okay. It's curious to see the concept of playfulness in the development of your
Yeah.
ideas. And I'd expect to see that in a television company, or a company which has its roots in creating television. It's fascinating to see how the idea does work across all three aspects
Mm.
of your separate businesses. And I'm especially interested in how playfulness can come together with public affairs, business desk, and those kind of general ideas. How much room have you provided for that within your company?
Well, the Chamberlain Files is our political blog that we use as a bit of a shop window onto RJF. Now, as you saw from the middle segment of my presentation, it's boring as hell when you're talking about changes in structures and bureaucracies. But what is interesting and what people do engage with is the human story around politics in particular. And what we're trying to do with the Chamberlain Files is to try and put some colour on that. And at the end of the day, to try to take it not too seriously, because it's far too serious. If you see what I mean. Yeah, so we enjoy playing. We want people to be able to talk about it and talk about the people that are involved in it, and hopefully that will get them more engaged.
Sophia, do you want to? Yeah. Just go for it.
very successful. So there's obviously a platform, but how do you see it being sustainable? Do you think it will just continue to grow in that area, or?
I don't know is the answer. I do think that but because of some of the changes that Mark pointed out, in the UK, the world is changing, the health world is changing, the National Health Service is unsustainable in the current way it's set up. And as Adrian said, we're all going to live a lot longer. And that's going to put lots of demand on ourselves, our families, and the health services that we engage with. So I think it's continually changing, and because we are changing as human beings. I think also because of the structural changes that are taking place, that people want to have more control, they want to have access to that data, they want to participate with GPs and providers in ways that they feel they have a right to now, which maybe 10, 20 years ago it was go to the doctor, go to the GP, he or she will sort you out, that's the end of it. Well, actually, people are using their apps to sort themselves out because one can have some control over it. That's not to say the role of the GP, the nurse, the practice manager, the radiographer, the specialist consultant are going to go. They are really important people. In terms of the company that we're setting up, the Digital Life Sciences, we're trying to create products that do that, like a feedback app for BCH, where people can comment back to the health service about what they think is going on. Mid-staffs is coming up that review. We've got to make sure that we learn from that. And I think the open and transparency data arguments, where people want to understand the performance of the health services and feedback directly into that. And we're working with a range of partners, including Patient Opinion, to develop those sort of things. So, sorry, I don't have an answer to where it's going, but it's certainly going.
Okay.
I've got an opinion as well on that, a personal opinion. I hate the idea, the thought that we're all going to be monitored in some way, and that health is about something, they're all going off in here now, movement detectors and sensors and things like that. But I think technology definitely will have a role. but the personal aspects of it, the fact that you can sit and talk to somebody, whether that's a person that's right in front of you or whether it's over Skype or something like that, will still be phenomenally important. But I don't want to sit in a room and be monitored everything I do at all.
We did a project in Grampian with, we did a simulation of someone getting a diagnosis, going to see the GP and going to see the consultant, and then going back home to talk to their friend or loved one about it. And they retained about 5% of the information.
Okay.
95% of it's lost.
There's
Sorry.
panel. No, it's fine. There's about 4 or 5 people. David at the back first. Do you need the mic for the recording? Is that the idea? Perfect. Okay, good. And then can I have hands up? Who else wanted to have a question? Because I saw a couple there, one there and one there. Perfect.
It's not so much a question, but a comment. But I think it just changed the shape of engagement. I really do. Whether it's digital technologies used at point of engagement, on getting health support and information and knowledge and guidance, or whether it's a secondary follow-up that you've been and engaged. And I think it won't. I agree with Johnny. It won't get rid of people, but it will make the services incredibly more efficient. And what I mean by that is that it's not a case of, I don't think it'll be a case of going in and you get what you would have got in 15 minutes, you now get it in 2 minutes, but actually there perhaps would just be less people wanting those services because they've consumed or got the services from a different place. And so I think it just changes the shape of that sort of funnel of consuming health. And some things you are absolutely wanting to speak to people face to face as a trigger point, but other things you actually know you're just consuming it because modern technology allows you to make those choices off your own back.
Thanks, David. So there's a comment from the guy in front, please.
This is just an open question, really. What I'm really interested in is you guys have kind of got there with your digital world. Some smaller people that are in the process of, I think most of us appreciate that we have to be involved, engaged. It's how we do it. Did you start off by just employing that whiz person who could design the widget that did everything you needed, or did you freelance it out by project? So it's the process of bringing the digital aspect of your business and making it work that I'm particularly interested in. And it's an open question for all three.
I think if you're leading a business of any size, but maybe particularly if it's a small business, you need to own that personally. You need to go in and get your hands dirty. Go and have a play. Get yourself signed up to a number of platforms, WordPress being a good one, and just see how long it takes you to break the internet. Because you're not going to, and nothing bad's really going to happen. In order to get used to how things are constructed, and the connections that you then make just by getting used to one or two of these services, particularly the ones that are applicable to how you run your business, so whether it's organising data or communicating with customers. Even those that are fairly basic. The opportunities that you can extrapolate from using those can be applied to your specific business niche, I'm sure, particularly in the way that digital, the way of communicating digitally can have transformative effects. So I'd say it's really down to you to be very, very hands-on. Get right out of any comfort zone that you think you're in, because a geek in Plimsolls ain't going to solve it for you on their own without you being part of that process as well.
Phil?
Chance, sometimes just paths cross, and it's being networked and being out and doing things like this. You might just speak to someone, I think, so there's a chance that sometimes comes into it. Passion, and looking at specifically one area that you think you can solve. Because if you take games, for example, we could cover all sorts of different areas, games in industry, games in training, education, but we're going to stick quite specifically to health so that we can build on experience time after time after time from both the technology. So, for instance, reusing platforms, build something, keep reusing it. And if you're applying it to health, then there's, I'm learning at the moment about things called care pathways. I'd never have dreamed of been learning about things like that. And all of a sudden, because we're focused on health, I have to understand those.
I just think it's being open to talent. You know, whatever that talent is, support it, back it, and then trying to get business in, and that talent can work in it.
It's where you find initial talent, the talent, where does it come from?
Well, you know,
Actively recruit, do you friend with a friend, you know, it's like a kind of one linchpin that you kind of work with and take the whole press forward. Is it just trial and error?
in telly, there's lots of talented people, and there's lots of grades and roles that people understand. And if you want a camera person or an editor or a production manager, there are people out there that do those jobs. And when we get projects in, we employ people. But as I said, the development team is a different matter, which is an ideas generation team that is a mixture of people that are imaginative and come up with new stuff, but also people that are working with commissioners, people that you're selling to. And I think producers are always forgotten in this debate about skills and training. You need producers, people that go out, they know the marketplace, and they go out and sell.
I was thinking of the word broker as well there. People who can broker ideas and networks and places. So I think what Johnny said, I think is kind of true from my experience of this kind of thing. You know, who can you relate to? Who can you network with? Who's going to help you share that common purpose you have? But there's another question. The guy at the back, and then Jill.
Talk. All three of you mentioned in regard to data. Now, in the future, how do you think that's going to be managed, and what do you determine as a reliable resource of data? Because there's been talks about reputation for certain peoples and things like that. And the final bit is the privacy side of it, because people are so open with their data at the moment. Do you think that will change in the future, and how's that going to impact on what you guys are trying to do?
Same order again. So Mike, nice, simple question. The future of data.
Yeah.
It's critical.
Well,
It's a resource.
I mean, it seems not to be the case anymore for many of the big public authorities, but they did used to hide behind issues of privacy in order not to actually work on the format of their data and to anonymise it in order to get meaningful data out of the buckets that they control. That seems to be changing, and that's all to the good, but the next big challenge is to get the different sources of data to be readable in the same way, so that it does actually, you can go fishing in several ponds and then bring together your catch of information to make sense of it. And the magic comes from overlaying that data from different sources to see what emerges. In terms of the quality of it, then I think that will become an increasing issue, and there'll no doubt be grading systems to give reassurances to the provenance of or otherwise of certain sources of data. But again, we all have responsibility for making sure that the raw materials we take into our business are top notch, because they then inform the products that go out. So it's as much to us as producers as the owners of the original.
We started off by saying I had a little bit of technical knowledge, and that's dangerous. But one of the things I have got a lot of knowledge about is this thing called XML, standards. And a nod there. So standards are going to be important, and what you were just saying about being able to use information. So you need metadata. You need to be able to describe the data that's useful. So I think standards. I think the use of semantic information is going to be important. The cloud, obviously, and how that develops. Whether or not you have private clouds. Whether can't remember. There's a joke somewhere about the different kinds of clouds in the sky, but still. I actually think we're in a project at the moment where we said, well, we can build our own cloud. That's fine. It's just loads of data. But then some of the people within the project came back and said, no, we'll just reuse Amazon or we'll reuse Google. So standards, and I don't know.
I don't know. Data. One area I'm interested in data is the visualization of data. When people talk about data, it's like this strange thing that's hidden away, and it's terribly important, and it's screwing up all our lives and what have you. But actually, when you actually start to visualize data and see, I think I've forgotten what the guy's name, fantastic data visualizer, that gathers together information, makes it available in a visual way, so you start to understand the relationships between global investment in the military. And when you see that as a big blob there and a little blob there, you start to kind of work out what's going on in the world. So I think that's an area that I'd like to see data being more understandable rather than problematic.
So it's like things like GIS and infographics and things like that.
I think infographics is a really interesting space because I think people are, you know, my son now goes to YouTube for every question he wants to ask. He just goes to YouTube. Doesn't ask me, doesn't ask anybody else, he goes to YouTube. And there's a film about what he wants to know about. And a lot of those films, the clever ones are the infographic ones that are actually taking you through a process. So it's an educational experience rather than just an entertainment experience.
That's really good. I've got a question from Jill, then I'll come to the colleague in the front. It's a very strange experience. The mic doesn't sound, but we're using it, so there must be a word for this.
Technology.
Technology, yeah, I know.
New opportunity.
New opportunity, yes. It's a very strange experience chairing this, but never mind. Jill.
Can I return to the point that the previous speaker, before the one about data, made about getting started or smaller organisations? I, on the board of an arts organisation, as many of you know, called Ex Cathedra, and we've got drawn increasingly into working in education and health. And particularly exciting is a move that we've made into working with children with life-limiting conditions in the Children's Hospital in Birmingham, but also now working at the other end of the scale with adult sufferers from stroke and using singing as a way of rehabilitating those patients, particularly the stroke ones that I'm referring to. And it's about the follow-up, and that's why I was particularly interested in what you were talking about, Phil, in terms of the games and the opportunities for learning and relearning. The problem is, with lots of small companies, we never have the time, the resource within that company to follow it through and make the right connections and actually realise the transformation of our business that we could be realising. And I wonder if this brokering that we talk about, where is the actual sort of collective broker opportunity that we ought to have for this city or this region? Because there's an awful lot of brilliant ideas being worked on and being delivered face to face, but that could actually generate a lot more in terms of business opportunities for those companies or the partnerships that could be realised.
Fantastic question.
It is a polemic almost.
Yeah, I think we should track the question.
Well, we'll find some suggestions for the answers. Phil, do you want to kick off with that?
Well, I mean, I've been in that position very recently, trying to kick a yoga off in the UK. And first of all, the things that occurred to me whilst you were asking the question is time. One of the things is it never, ever happens as fast as you want it to do. Secondly is where do you go, like you're saying? Where do you start? There are lots of things out there that I've found useful. So in the city, in Birmingham, there's Marketing Birmingham, you may know about. Yeah, okay. Well, they were fantastically helpful. Sorry, I don't know. Yeah. They were fantastically helpful for me to link me with other people. And then there's things like Innovate UK, and that's where our paths crossed, where there are growth accelerator projects. But what I've found very useful is to reach out to the universities as well, because more and more, certainly Birmingham, and I've been working with Coventry and Stafford University, they're all about actually enterprise now, and it's not. It seems to me less about academia and education and things like that. Everybody I speak to says, well, we've got this budget for doing this, that, and we've got to really return something on that. So they're now really, I don't know the right word, they've changed from being somewhere where people go to learn to being organisations that are actually spreading out and connecting people and using research to build on ideas. So I can give you, there's things that, three-letter acronyms, knowledge transfer partnerships, technology strategy board grants, FP7 for Europe, and then there's Horizon 2020. I'm sure you may have heard of all of these, but it's the paths that I've got to. I think the answer to what you're saying is there a one-stop shop for that?
Yes, I think
It would be great if there was. This is what I need to make this by then. How can you do it for me?
If I could just comment on that, the answer a little while ago was we'll create a call centre at BusinessLink and they'll know the answer to everything. And the problem is it was just too complicated and it still is, I'm afraid.
It's not. Lara's probably bursting to say something on that. It's her world. Hello? Oh, there it is.
I think Joe's point's really valid, and I did want to get back to the point that sort of made here, because I've obviously worked with lots of businesses in this area, and there isn't a central mechanism anymore, so you have to come and accept your, that's gone. I think all we do what everyone else does, which is you have to sign up to everything, so technology strategy board, innovation vouchers are still going. I can do 20 off the top of my head now. Unfortunately, if you're asking for a central public sector mechanism, that isn't there anymore. I think for me, the other thing to add is you have to kind of invest your own time in this. I'm a freelancer now, and I'm working, as well as my core businesses, I work in health, transport and education in terms of digital, and that's miles away from what I was doing within the arts, and that's all in the last 18 months. I also get 300 RSS feeds that I have to personally go through every single night. So I think there isn't a really central mechanism. There's a really good opportunity for somebody who wants in this room who wants to set up a central mechanism that is a subscriber service. Roberts might have an idea there. But I think I've come back to the point about the universities. Coventry are here today, BCU are here today, and I would really look at all of the, there's a number of European projects within Coventry University particularly, but within ECE as well, your cost innovation. I'd really be involved in those kind of programmes, because that's where a lot of the support's coming from at the moment.
Any more comments on the panel? Because there's another colleague who wanted to say
Just
have a question.
One quick
take a
thing that
response
I've
and I'll
found useful is to think about your revenue streams carefully. Think about where it's going to come from, and the funding that I'm talking about with TSBs and KPTs and okay, they'll pay you wages, and they're going to pay 60 to 75% wages. That gives you a little bit of time to start looking for direct funding.
I wanted to ask Johnny a quick question, which is actually kind of in response to what you were talking about, but you also mentioned YouTube. Obviously, in television things have been changing a lot in the last 5 years, but actually this year YouTube has really grown, and all those Google commission channels have been growing, and that's quite a big thing. How does that affect kind of traditional platforms, and do you think that will change the way things are commissioned?
I think we're in a multi-platform world. I think TV was going to kill radio, cinema was going to kill the rest of them, and YouTube was going to kill telly. It's not happening. Everybody wants to use media in their own way. It's becoming more accessible. The deal with Google is a massive breakthrough, because now they're commissioning, i.e. paying for content, and because they see the value in editorially created content, because they've tried it in the States and it's actually working, because viewers value more focused, editorially driven channel, but also advertisers do as well, because people stay on it longer. And Dan has said that he's actually focusing on creating longer form Google channels, i.e. 6 or 7 or 8 minute pieces rather than 1 or 2 minutes, and the figures show that it's happening. So I think it's going to continue growing, and that's an excitement and a wonder that it is. I think also the point about older people that was made here, and about health and using arts and culture to engage with people is really important.
Fantastic.
And Strictly is an amazing phenomenon. You know, it's 6:30 on Saturday night. People are dancing. I'm doing a project in Falkirk, that centre of the world up in Scotland, Forth Valley, and there's Falkirk is dancing. Old folk in Falkirk are all dancing. And I think it's fantastic. And if we can encourage people to use the arts and culture and active participation in projects, using technology or not, I don't care if it's technology or not, but it's actually creating those sort of opportunities. Just a couple of points on one of our mantras was always develop if you're in production. If you've got a gig, make it as best as you possibly can, but make sure as you're producing that, the development is taking place at the same time. So once that one's finished, there's another one. You've got to keep doing that. If we ever failed at that, then we're in trouble. And also a plug for Warwick, where the new IPSI building in Warwick is actually doing a lot of startup funding and workshops for this space, for this digital innovation space. So there are across the region some fantastic opportunities. I think it's very difficult to rely on the public sector though. You know, we're in a different world than we were 5-10 years ago.
Okay, I've got one more question here, and I just want to test for you guys. We're coming to almost 7 o'clock now, so I'm going to maybe take this one. Is there anyone else burning to say something to contribute tonight, or are we okay? Is that, if not, then we'll conclude with a colleague on the left.
Okay, Steve O'Neill, Hallett O'Neill. It's just a reflection, really, perhaps to close, that you're all in the stories business. So while we're looking at the tea leaves and looking where digital's going, what's common to all of you is stories, whether you make your own story, whether you have mastery of your own story, and maybe a message to all of us. And I'm certainly leaving this event thinking, what's my story, who am I telling?
Fantastic.
Really good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to end tonight. Actually, I'm going to close now. I thank you for participating in tonight, because I think it's been fantastic. The questions have been really good and insightful, and I think we've learnt a lot, or I have anyway, in terms of where this space is going. Can we thank again Johnny, Phil and Mark for doing such a fantastic job this evening. I'd like to thank the hosts and Lara for putting this thing together. These things are not easy to do, and to get you out on a wet Monday night in January after Christmas is not easy. So I think it's super. So all those RSS feeds must be something like so, it must be good for you. The next event, can someone prompt me with that?
January 28th.
It's behind me.
Oh no, it's not.
Well, I've got a stiff neck from looking behind me, so there we go. I don't need to say. There you go, colleagues. So I'll close it tonight. Thank you all for coming, and wish you well. And there's an opportunity to a little bit more networking. Oh yes, the dreaded evaluation form, which you probably have sat on. So if you can tell your story tonight on that little evaluation form, we'll be immensely grateful. Thank you again.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Very good.